If you know the work that you're doing is solid and is beneficial to people, like if you get people like coming at you in a negative way, just understand that's on them, not on you. And so I think that's the most important thing, because in a day and age where we're all on social media, the trolls will come out.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the better takeaway for me was not to ignore it, but to recognize that, like, if somebody is reacting in a negative way to something that's generally positive, that's on them, and they can keep that. I don't have to own that.
This is Breaking Through the Noise, practical strategies from emerging thought leaders who've actually broken through the noise on their terms. I'm your host, Katherine Jelinek. Let's get real and let's get into it. Hello, everyone. So it is my absolute pleasure to get to introduce you to one of my new friends.
Yeah.
Kim Fischer. Kim is an absolute rock star, and her area of natural gift is in spoken storytelling and unlocking that both for herself and then with and for others. She's the founder of Kim Fischer Collective, the Kim Fischer Collective, and has been a head of storytelling within companies, head of marketing and communications. Started her fabulous career as a journalist on local TV news channels in San Antonio, Salt Lake City, Dallas. I can't wait. Welcome, Kim. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so looking forward to this conversation in whatever direction it goes.
I know. So many good ones it could take too. But we're going to start with you. So you had a huge moment in your career where you broke through the noise and broke through on behalf of a story that needed to be heard.
Yeah.
Take us there. What was that?
And it was completely unexpected. Truly, it was a passion project of mine, which maybe we should kind of go ahead and, check that one as a thing to keep in mind. But I had been in journalism at that point for about 10 years. And I saw a video online, and it was like this street harassment thing, this woman just walking down the street getting harassed. And I'm like, that's not okay. And I thought, I wonder if this is happening here. And at the time I was in Utah. And so I just kind of put something out there on social media, and just women left and right and left and right, all ages, all backgrounds. And so I did a panel discussion with all of these women, like 15. Every single one of them had experienced sexual harassment. Every single one of them had been groped in public. And all but like one had experienced like sexual assault of some kind. And I was floored. And so that was the very first story that I did on sexual assault. And the emails that flooded in from women, just like telling me about things that had happened to them, telling me they had never told anyone that story before. And these were women who sometimes were in their 60s, 70s, and they were holding on to that secret their whole life. And so it was very clear that I had hit a nerve with this story, and I knew I needed to do more. And so, there were women that would write in, and that would lead to another story on, the justice system. And it would lead to another story on trauma in prisons, where like most of the women who were in prison had experienced trauma. It was something like 90%. And so it's just like all of a sudden these stories started coming out. And what was very clear is that this was a topic that people were not talking about, but it was a topic that impacted a lot of people. And so I think that's truly what led to the several years of me doing these stories, and quite honestly, becoming a thought leader in this space. It led me to going to different national conferences, speaking in keynotes, and winning an award, a National Gracie Award in New York City. So it was,
Congratulations.
thank you, but it was truly telling other people's stories, but doing so in a way that impacted a large audience, because it had happened to so many people and it was never discussed.
And let's just back up 2 seconds, because before we started recording, you and I placed this in time. When was this and when was it in relation to Me Too?
Yeah, it was 2 years before Me Too. It was 2015. And the Me Too movement, as we had discussed, had been around since 2006, but it exploded into the national spotlight in October 2017. Yeah.
So this was an unmet need at this time, and it was something that still felt new and unspoken.
Correct. Yeah. And so a lot of, the bigger stories that I did, were in 2017. Yeah, that's when I won the Gracie, was 2017. And I think it was like that national nerve had gotten hit, and I was already out there doing the stories. And so it just,
So often when people break through the noise, they happen to get to be the one who's there and they happen to be in connection with this thing where it is the time for it is now.
Right.
And you were there to be the channel for this thread of story. What can you share with people who find themselves in that moment or did in the past or might in the future? Like what do you do when you get to be a channel for something where it just happens to be that its time is now and you have a door for it?
I think the most important thing that you can do is be thinking way ahead of the moment. And so know what it is that you're talking about, know what your thought leadership topic is, and constantly be looking for those areas that are starting to talk about that and try to insert yourself. I think that's the most important way, because if you get ahead of the curve, people are going to see you as a leader in that space far before others. And so I think constantly being aware of what's happening out there and where the need is, if you can insert yourself in those audiences, you're going to get ahead of your competition.
And then how do you actually insert yourself in those audiences? I mean, like some doors open easier than others. What,
For
any tips
sure.
of the trade? And
That's a great question. I would think I'm trying to also put in my, executive experience here and ways that I've helped other people get to that point in a more executive way, not journalist, right?
yeah.
And that has been my chief academic officer, Jenny Torres at Waterford, is a perfect example. She was brilliant. She cared about trauma and its impact on children, and she was a phenomenal curriculum writer. And so she came to me and said, "I want to get out there. I want to be featured." And so she started looking for publications that she felt would want to hear her message. And then she started kind of like looking for a topic that went into the topics that she appreciated. So, for example, there was a period of time that people were talking about how to best infuse technology into education. Well, that's exactly what we did at Waterford, and she was super knowledgeable about it. And so she came to me and said, "This topic came out in this publication. Let's see if I can get an op-ed there or in other publications of a similar level, or even maybe a step down, and say, this publication just did this big expose story. I can tell you more about it." And man, that's the kind of ways that people will start to pick up. Another thing is, if you have a strong social media following, utilizing that can be helpful as well. But one thing that I think people don't think about a lot is the fact that whatever your topic is, you need to be out there repeating it over and over again. You need to be sick of hearing yourself saying it and thinking like people are going to be tired of it, because they're not, especially once you start hitting new audiences. They haven't heard you say that before. And then the people who do follow you understand that that's the topic you talk about.
And I've heard you say this to me before, but how many times now do you have to hear something before you actually receive it in our career?
This is crazy because, okay, at least 7 years ago, the number was 7. Somebody had to hear something 7 times before they took action. And that's something that's pretty widely discussed when you're talking about advertising, right? So you want touch points. It is now 13.
Why did that change?
Attention spans. We don't have it anymore. That's my guess. We're just in a different, like, people, information comes out rapidly now. And I think our attention span is short and people have lots of options.
Right.
Yeah.
Even when we feel like we've said it a million times, we're repeating ourselves, like, keep going. You probably haven't even hit exhaust yet.
Yeah.
And what I heard back to the story that you shared about the executive at Waterford was that she was taking a message that mattered to her that wasn't quite out yet. Right. And because of the credibility that she could gain with what they did, opened a door, but then put what she wanted to say in. Yes.
Right. Yes. And again, very beginning of the conversation, when I said the topic was something I was passionate about, let's put a pin in that.
Mm-hmm.
That. Because you have to have that passion and that knowledge in order to go out and be a thought leader, because people can sense authenticity. That's what they connect to. That's what they trust. If you're out there just repeating words, people can pick up on that. Like, it's been my job to do that when I'm talking to someone and to sense that, that BS meter,
Yeah.
kind of up, and then I dig a little further. But all of us have that inside. All of us are like, something about that felt off. And so if you can remain authentic and you can connect with your audience, like, man, that's the best way to ensure that your thought leadership topic is the right one.
I still want to go back one more time to your story, and then we can kind of take a step further to how you've unpacked things as you really do a lot of incredible work for other thought leaders. Because I think it's a unique thing what you did, and it's kind of like getting to bottle lightning when you care for something
Yeah.
that time has come. It's really unique. And I know that not all of us are going to have that experience in life, but for those who do, it's not like they have a lot of space to get to talk to others who've done it. What else? It's in the way of like bottling lightning, like it also could burn you if you didn't do it right.
You want that story? Ah!
Well, just yeah, more on it because it's not a normal moment of thought leadership.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's highly impactful, totally like can get it wrong and then tank something.
Yeah.
Tell us more. Like, what else do we need to know if that ever occurs?
So I think there have been multiple times throughout my journey with stories on trauma. Let's just say trauma, that things have happened where you end up with an adversary that you didn't expect. And this one in particular, I think, is probably the most helpful for your audience. I had done the story on trauma and the impact trauma has on women and how they end up in prison. And it's typically, that whatever that traumatic thing is, it leads them to making poor decisions. And that's kind of what lands them in prison. So I had a woman in prison write me a letter, and she'd seen my story, and she told me her story. And it was the reason I went and did the story. So I went to the Utah State Prison, interviewed several women. I was so proud of it. And then my news director was like, okay, we're going to call this the trauma to prison pipeline, as like the headline for all of our, teasers and stuff that would go out on commercials. And so one of them went out, and a woman from the Northeast somewhere, I can't even remember her name, started just harassing me online, harassing my boss, saying that we had stolen her, like mental property or something like that, because she had made up the trauma to prison pipeline. I had no idea who this woman was. But that situation was like, I had to deal with that so much. And like we initially started by trying to be kind to her, and and it just, man, that thing lasted for like a month dealing with it, and it totally took away from the story. I didn't enter it for any awards or anything like that. But I think it's important to be aware that the more you become known, the more competitors there will be out there that are going to try to fight your idea in some way, shape, or form. And so I think that's a really good but awful
Yeah.
example of
No, but that's important.
those things can kind of arise out of nowhere and come out of left field, and you just have to be prepared for it.
You do. And it's the whole thing, both of like, I'm sure you had to grow like tougher skin during that time because not everybody had something pleasant to say as you got more known and heard. And then also having to deal with those who are like, hey, no, this was my idea, or this is my thought, or this is my phrase. And I can see how, yeah, that makes sense.
Trademark
Something
stuff,
really
trademark stuff.
intellectual property. Yeah, totally. Yes. Yes. But I mean, yep. Yep. If you're going to find yourself in the spotlight will attract
All
this as
kinds of
well.
people. It will. Yeah.
Okay. And any words of wisdom on both of those elements, both of like the inner toughness to deal with being a target and then having to deal with the competitive nature of others who want to grab you out of there?
Sure. I'll say this. If you know the work that you're doing is solid and is beneficial to people, like if you get people like coming at you in a negative way, just understand that's on them, not on you. And so I think that's the most important thing, because in a day and age where we're all on social media, the trolls will come out. And there's something that we always used to say in news, like, don't read the comments. But at the end of the day, the better takeaway for me was not to ignore it, but to recognize that, like, if somebody is reacting in a negative way to something that's generally positive, that's on them, and they can keep that. I don't have to own that. So that's kind of like the negativity aspect of it. The competition, I think there's two things with competition. One, competition can make us stronger.
Yeah, I actually love competition. It's a good thing. Yes.
And so if somebody is out there doing it, I think there's for the most part, space for all of us.
Mm.
It's very easy to kind of get jealous sometimes. Like I see
Yeah.
people on LinkedIn that do really great comp stuff, and I'm like, oh, that was a good one.
Right.
Then I go, you know what? Like, follow this person. They have great content. And also it causes me to think about what they're saying in my own frame of reference and light. Don't go stealing people's stuff, but take that and understand, how can I make my work better because of this person?
Mm.
I think competition can be a really good thing if we allow ourselves to see it that way, and we put down the natural human emotion of jealousy and envy and flip that around in a more positive light.
Yes. See it as a call to become better rather than like having to beat ourselves up some all day and reflect that back onto them as like something wrong with whatever through jealousy.
Yeah,
Yes.
like we all would love to just sit on our laurels and make lots of money, but that's not
Yes.
how it happens, right?
Mm. We have to actually get up and do something uncomfortable most of the time.
Yeah, you got to put in the work. And so if somebody is challenging you to be better, step up to the challenge.
I love that. And back to the other lesson of like everything anybody ever says is usually about more about them than about you, even
Yeah.
the good too. But
Yeah. Take
we're
it.
here for all of it. Apparently, it's human life.
Yeah.
Okay, so take us now down the road. You've done this, you've journalism, like head of storytelling, marketing, communications. What do people who are stepping into thought leadership, emerging thought leaders need to know? And especially given that your craft is the spoken story and all of the other elements of audience receiving spoken story. Give us your tools and what we need to know here.
This is my
How to break
world
through them.
right now. And
Yes,
I love talking about this because it's something that feels like it comes so naturally to me because I did journalism for 16 years, that there are so many smart people doing wonderful things that they're like, why can I connect with the audience? And a lot of it comes down to just using plain speak. We get into our fields, and there's a lot of jargon. When I was working at Waterford, oh my gosh, the jargon in education, there are so many acronyms where I'm just like, what does that even mean? Right. But when you've got people with PhDs talking to each other and they're academics, they use all of this and it's fine. But when they step onto a stage and they're speaking to a broad audience, some of which may not even have a high school degree, right? I mean, some of which may have a high school degree, but that's it, and they're Head Start teachers. You're going to lose them if you start using those terminologies. And so, the first thing I always tell anyone who's stepping into a thought leadership position is that you are not talking to an audience of your peers at this point. You're talking to an audience that is broad. And in TV news, this could be seen as a negative, but it's not. We always would speak to fifth grade vocabulary or reading level.
no, I understand that.
Yeah.
You don't want to speak in any way where somebody out there is not going to understand.
And where
Like
you
that's not
feel like you're speaking down at them. Nobody
right.
likes that, right? And unfortunately, a large part of a viewing audience is not going to have as much education, and so that is the age or the number that we would think about when we would write. And it kept it so incredibly conversational and straightforward and to the point, and it removed all of those big words that we truly just don't even need most of the time. And so I would say, if you're stepping into a position of thought leadership, first thing, start to look at the way you speak. What if that is jargon? And what are you actually trying to say? What's the thing, right? Because typically, if you have all of these jargony words, you're trying to say something underneath that.
Yes, like the meaning, like what do you actually want them to feel and to realize about the situation? And even once you get to that place, maybe even the why behind that, right?
Absolutely. And then another part of that is always have a story. At the end of the day, while we like to be logical as human beings and we like our data and our facts and all of that stuff, people are still storytellers. That's where we connect. It's how we started, and it's still how our brains connect today. We
Isn't
connect
that
to
cool?
emotion. Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. We connect to emotion first, then logic. Like, you can throw all the logic out to somebody that you want, but it's not going to sink in until they feel something.
Which brings us back to your first point around passion.
Mm-hmm.
Because where are people going to feel emotion from you? Usually from something you give a damn about. enough and have enough, and also back to the passion and your former points, have enough staying power to deal with all of the comments and to deal with competition. So I just love that at the heart of these elements of
Yeah.
yours.
If you know what you're doing is good, keep going. You're going to run into all kinds of stuff. If it's bad, let it go. If it's good, let it fuel you. But if you're doing something that you're passionate about and you know it's helping others and you know it's making a difference, like that's what matters.
And give me one more tool or tip around the spoken messages,
Mhm.
because I'd assume that a lot of our listeners might have one area, like a book or a social media following, or other areas that aren't always, speeches, media responses, like language and in the moment connection. How do you deliver there and translate your messages from these other realms into that 30-second connect?
Sure. Again, I think it comes back to what we just talked about is like what's at the heart of what you're trying to say. And really make sure that you're driving that home. So I'm trying to think of an example here. I'll use a co-founder that I just worked with recently. And what she did very well was always hit her three talking points. Bam, bam, bam. So if she knew that that was what she needed to hit, then what surrounded that was whatever situation was happening that was going to bring her back to that again. And she did it successfully because it was always coming from here, not here. She didn't script everything out. This was something that she was passionate about and she loved. And so, because of that, she knew this is the point that I want to make. And this is the situation that I'm using to prove this point. And
Mm.
so, I think, especially with social media, if you can always be very clear on your objective and your goal and what you're utilizing to hit that, you can change that story over and over again and continue to reach your goal. And what that's also going to do is hit different audiences that are interested in whatever that situation is that's going to lead to your goal. Right. So whether it's interviewing some kids who are fifth graders that are learning at a ninth grade level, or showing a group of kids that are, changing a tire in their third graders, you're using this situation to say, this is how you get kids to do these things.
Mhm.
And so I used her as an example because it's one that was really recent for me and also one that was done very, very well. And that is you always have a goal with whatever it is you're talking about. And you just have to have a hook, if you will, to get to that goal.
And this is an example of what you said, where you say something 13 times. You're saying you don't have to say it the same way. You have a different story. It's baked in, but it's your same message to
Yes.
keep carrying. And especially in spoken word, you can't really have more than three, but probably even more like one
Mhm. Yeah.
of the things you hit. And I've learned that from getting to just enjoy talking to you is it's
Yeah.
different. Books offer a lot of space, a lot more time, a lot more layers to add. And
Yes.
speaking, you don't have that same level of capture.
Correct. But you know what is awesome?
Hmm.
The more you look for those stories, they're everywhere. They're everywhere, right? So for me, as you know, I talk about communication and the importance of communicating and the importance of clarity. I just moved a few weeks ago and I was not a great communicator during that move. And I recognized it and I owned it. And then, like, I posted about it. That was some of my thought leadership. I showed like where I failed in my communication the first time around, recognized it, allowed myself to beat myself up for it, like for, a day. And then the second, the move into the new place, I changed up my approach. Communication was better and it went great. So there are things that happen in your life daily. Start writing those down and using those as examples that you can put onto social media.
And how they tie back to the core message you're here to share.
Exactly.
Amazing. Okay. Kim, thank you so much. I love what you do. I love how simple you make it, but how much of a deep level of understanding of the craft you have behind the simplicity. That's like always an example to me, or a mark of somebody who's truly like deep in the craft
Yeah,
and knows what they're doing. So thank you for these and for sharing your story, because that's pretty
absolutely.
remarkable.
I'll tell you, clarity is kindness. That's what I tell everybody I work with. So there you go.
Good last tip, always important to underscore. Excellent. Thank you again, Kim, and everyone for listening. Underscore your clarity, find that one message and bring it home. Thanks again. Until next time, everyone. Thank you for listening to Breaking Through the Noise. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And drop a comment on topics you want to hear about in future episodes. We'd love to hear that. Thanks again for tuning in. Till next time.